Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I wanted to talk about Hebrew and the beauty of the Hebrew language and its importance in magical rituals. So, what is a magical ritual? The Roman Catholic Mass would be considered a magical ritual, and when the priest says, "This is my blood that has been given to you, do this for my remembrance, this is my body that has been given to you." So this is called in Roman Catholicism transubstantiation, where the priest, by his willpower, basically by visualization makes the wine into blood and the bread into the body of Christ. This would be considered a magical ritual. So there's not a lot, like, magic is not something, it's basically a way to get around the logical mind, and by repetition and changing your inside world, you change your outside world. That's what as above so below means. It means as without so within, and vice versa. And I wanted to talk about the Hebrew language, and it's if you meditate and you use Hebrew words to invoke, let's say, peace into your heart, and you use the word peace, or Friede in German, it's less powerful than if you use the Hebrew language. I don't know why that is. It's just that also Freemasonry uses Hebrew language for their ceremonies, for their rituals. Not all the time, but for important rituals they use Hebrew, and they have to learn Hebrew. But I think that's like the, I don't know, 31st, 32nd, 33rd degree people, so they use Hebrew. And if you use the word shalom to invoke peace, it's a much more powerful word to use in meditation than any other language. Why that is, I'm not sure. Well, I have an idea, but there's also a very interesting story about Enochian Magick. So Enochian Magick is basically was invented by a man, or not invented, but channeled by a man called Dr. D, and he had an assistant. His name was Kelly, and Dr. D was the Haus and Hof magician for Elizabeth I, Queen of England. and according to legend, Dr. D was responsible for defeating the Spanish Armada. So when the Spanish attacked England, the story goes that Dr. D used his knowledge of Enochian magic to defeat the Spanish fleet, and by this magical act, Great Britain became Great Britain. There's also a story about Francis Bacon being the real author of all the works of William Shakespeare. And if you listen to the news, the first man who got the vaccine, vaccine in England was a man named William Shakespeare. So, but I want to talk about Enochian Magick. So Dr. D found this man who was able to see spirits, and his name was Edward Kelly, and the story is even on Wikipedia. So and Edward Kelly had this gift that he could see into the spirit world. So he found this man, and he was a theologian, so he studied like sacred manuscripts, the Bible and so on. The magician Dr. D, and by the help of Kelly, who could see spirits, he used him to channel an ancient language that was supposedly the language used before the flood, and it's similar to Hebrew, and Enochian magic is basically the magic concerning the earth energies. And the Hindus have this saying that if you just know your ring finger, you can control the whole earth. If you just figure out your ring finger, you can control the whole earth. So the ring finger concerns earth, and Enochian magic is a kind of magic where you basically you have two kinds of altars. One with a what looks like a chessboard with 13 rows and a square made out of 13 rows, which would be 169 fields, 13 squared, and another altar with 12 rows, like a chessboard with 12 rows, which would be 144 places. And by using invocation, you could put Kabbalistic angels and Enochian angels into these squares, and by doing that you could shift the earth energies. And according to Tom Riddle, and I don't want to say his real name, but according to Tom Riddle, this has been massively used because it's very powerful, and it's extremely gruesome how to even construct an altar like that. And so the legend goes, let's put it that way, the legend goes that the altar that you need would be made out of bees' wax and of human blood. And you have one altar to the east and one altar to the west. And you would have to place and know where the Kabbalistic angels stand on the chessboard, which represents the earth and the nether realms. And by being able to use Edward Kelly, who could see these angels, he was able to move them around on the chessboard, and by doing that he was able to change the earth energy fields, which would have massive consequences for other countries. And according to the story, that's the occult secret behind, the occult power base behind Great Britain. So there was a lot of research into the paranormal, even from Russia during the Cold War, and they found out a lot of stuff, and they also were able to use electronic equipment to do what would be called spell work. So it would not be necessary for someone to do these complicated rituals. You could just press a button. So that's the story. This guy, the story behind him is that he made it his life's purpose to destroy or attack his former employer, which was, according to him, the Rothschild family. So, and he used to say, a Rothschild a day keeps the doctor away. So this guy has like thousands of hours of videos and MP3s about the history of magic and so on. Excuse me. So this sounds very outrageous and very much insane, and I know that sounds insane, but this person basically made it his life's purpose to explain to the people that this stuff is real, that it's a science, that you can't just buy a book and learn that stuff. You would have to have a mentor, and even then it would be extremely dangerous to do these things. And I'm just talking from memory now, but I'm not interested in performing feats like that, and I don't think God looks kindly on people who do that, and it's a great way to F up your life, to be involved in the occult. But this guy is like a fountain of knowledge, and he is like hiding in Asia, because he says that the Asian earth energies are different than the earth energies in the West. The earth energies in the West are based on what he called like a heptatonic, which would be a if you would translate it in music, it would be a chord made out of 7 tones, like an octave, and then it repeats again. So, and the Asian so-called dragon energies are based on 5 notes. So, if you read the Acts of the Apostles, when the Apostle Paul goes to preach the gospel, what does God tell him to do or not to do? What's the first thing he tells him? Do not go into Asia. Why? There's also been a movie about that, about Christian missionaries in China. The movie was with the guy who played, his name is Garfield. He played Spider-Man or something. I think it was a Mel Gibson movie. So the movie is called, I had to Google it, the movie is called Silence, and it's a very good movie. Andrew Garfield is a missionary, a Christian missionary, and they are sent into China because a priest has been, a very famous priest at the time has gone missing. So Liam Neeson was the Christian priest who vanished in China, and they were sending them to find him and on the way to spread the gospel. And he never came back. They both never came back. They were captured, and they were preaching the gospel, which was completely ineffective. They just could not understand what they were talking about. So that struck me when I read the Acts of the Apostles, that God told him specifically, do not set foot into Asia. And according to him, and as I said, he has like hundreds of hours of videos of him explaining on a chalkboard all the different kinds of magic, how they work, why they work, when they were invented, and so on and so on and so on and so on and so forth. So, and I think I've listened to like 200 hours of him speaking, and then there are thousands of hours of MP3 which I didn't even scratch the surface of what he was talking about there. So he basically mostly talked about Kabbalistic magic and Enochian Magick also. So, and that was the most interesting thing, that he said that this was discovered basically by accident by Dr. John Dee, who was the magician for Elizabeth I. And so that's just a funny question. If Elizabeth I had a magician, has this stopped? Or when truth can never change, according to epistemology, philosophy, theology, when truth can never change, then Elizabeth I had a magician. So did she have a magician because he couldn't do anything, or it's just a fairy tale? Or did she have a magician? Because he did do stuff. So also, like I said, this guy is that was like the height of seduction, that this information that this guy like dropped out there into my lap, and I think I was one of the first few people to watch his his videos. They might be removed now because of the community guidelines. I don't know, I'm not sure. But I used to wait for the next video of him, and he was just standing in a public park. I think it was a cemetery, but it also was a public park, and he used the gravestones for altars. And he explained that all this old magic has become irrelevant because there is, through quantum physics, there is a new thing where you can do all these things, including what Aleister Crowley tried to do, the Abramelin ritual, what's also called the ritual of Abramelin the Mage, which I did in my backyard, which he invested like 8 months into to do that. And that's to connect yourself with your HGA, your Holy Guardian Angel, but I'm not going into detail about that. So Crowley bought himself a house in Scotland with a lake to the east, which had to have a lake to the east, because east is hell space, hell realm. So and according to legend, all the people that he was in contact with when he bought the house Boleskine in Loch Ness, of all places, Loch Ness. When Aleister Crowley bought the house, all the people who worked there, who did repair work and whatever, they all either died, committed suicide, or ended up in a mental home. So when he used to call himself the Beast 666, and I think he even had that as his signature, or his signature was Baphomet or something. So this guy was very much into black magic, and he invested like I don't know how much money and so on to achieve the Abramelin ritual. And Tom Riddle explained that you can do that much more easily. It takes like, I don't know, a few hours. And equipment that costs like, I don't know, 70 euros, $70 to do that. So they figured out all that stuff. And anyway, so the most outrageous thing he talked in his hundreds of hours of what I watched of him, of his what basically were lectures. He was having a flip chart and drawing stuff and so on, and he had the books. He said they are not available to the public and so on. So one of the books is just a book full of archetypes, like Jungian archetypes and magical archetypes. But he said that everything that's in imagination or has been in the past is an archetype. So even like if you like the movie Iron Man, you could invoke Iron Man. You could visualize the um, the armor that he wears in the astral realm and use that to fly around. If you know about astral projection, so everything that was ever imagined by anyone is an archetype. Every movie, every book, everything, you can invoke that, and you, by repetition, get some of these attributes. That doesn't mean you're changing into Iron Man. It just means that you can use that in astral projection. And you can also do rituals in the astral world. So that was completely mind-blowing to me. And this knowledge that he just threw out there just to piss off the Rothschilds. As he said, a Rothschild a day keeps the doctor away. And so this guy was unbelievable, and he knew like the mathematics behind it. And then not on a superficial level like people on Facebook or whatever. So his videos were sometimes like 2 hours long, just explaining how the druids made wands and why a wand works. It was just fascinating, so I was immediately fascinated by that. And I used to even be in contact with with a friend of his who worked for MI6, and it's just unreal. And that was like the last attempt, the maximum amount of seduction that was put on me. At least I think that came from somewhere, because when he explained the mathematics behind it and chemistry and so on, because he also studied chemistry and he was a scientist, so, and it just blew me away, because this guy knew what he was talking about. Because I studied chemistry, I didn't finish it, but I studied chemistry, so this guy knew what he was talking about, and that was just unreal. And he started with like the history of druidic magic. So he started very slow and then went further into what's called quantum physics. And just for example, the Principia Hermetica, the Hermetic principles, represent quantum physical states. Like, for example, one of the Hermetic principles is, if two things meet and have contact with each other, they will be entangled forever. They will be connected forever. And the Hermetic principles are thousands of years old. And that's the whole concept of quantum entanglement, where they proved that the idea that there is, like Einstein said, there is a cosmic speed limit, which is 299,000 kilometers per second. But if you have two quantum entangled particles and you change one of them, irrelevant of how much space is between them, even if it's the whole universe, the other one will change instantly at the same time. So if you change one of them, irrelevant of how much space is between, the other one will change into the same state immediately. So it's pretty interesting. And I think that a few years earlier I might have killed for that knowledge that is just unimaginable what this guy was talking about. And I don't think that I really think he just wanted to piss off his former employers, and they tried to his apartment was bombed or something, flooded, and so that was in newspapers even in England, that his apartment building blew up. That was his apartment. He went through it with his video camera, so that was his apartment. So, and his apartment was full of equipment to ward off electromagnetic energy, which were like huge steel plates around his bedroom, because he said he was targeted with microwave radiation, and steel plates turn microwave radiation into Wärmeenergie, into warmth. So they basically, he used to laugh and said they paid for his apartment to be kept warm. And yeah, so that's the story about Tom Riddle. And yeah, thank you for listening.